Okay, I'm getting ready to take the fuel gauge sending unit, which is attached to this, out and put in the new Holley electric fuel pump unit in there. First of all, one of the questions I had before I bought this was about the return line, because the Sniper system requires 58 pounds of pressure on the fuel system. This unit has 58 pounds of pressure. It is designed and matched to go with the Sniper Quadrajet, since the Quadrajet was what was on the '76 Corvette. So one of the questions I had, this has a pressure regulator built into the pump that will limit the pressure to 58 pounds. So my question was, do I need to run a return line since the Sniper requires 58 pounds and this is internally regulated to 58 pounds? And I called Holley and they said, no, you don't need it. But now that I'm looking at this, there's an output line, as there was on the original fuel sending unit, fuel gauge sending unit, and the original has a return line that came from the fuel pump. 5/16 return line, 3/8 supply line. All that the new unit with the electric pump has is one line. It is a 3/8 and it's the supply line. Now, you might ask, well, what's this? That's for the vapor canister vent, which I don't believe the Sniper provides any means to hook that up. So that's what was hooked to here, and it was teed off to this vent. Why there's two into the gas tank, I'll never know. It doesn't seem to make any sense. But that went to the vapor canister and then went to the carburetor, which had the ability to evaporate gasoline from the bowls. So that would vent it back to the tank. So the Sniper doesn't have that capability, so we're just going to leave that plugged. The other thing that's different is this harness was plugged in here for a ground. I don't know if you can see it on the video right now, but there's a little pin right here that went into this. That is for your fuel gauge on your dashboard. It's the sending unit. So this end plugged into a wiring harness that's in the body. On the new unit, I just have to keep switching back here and see if I can show. There is no such ground. I guess there is, but they don't tell you to use it. That's interesting, because the wiring harness looks like this, which isn't going to plug into that. But it does have another piece that does plug into that, still in the bag. Plugs into that, and on the other end it's just 4 bare wires right there. And according to the diagram that they give you, the wiring diagram, those 4 wires are as such. There's a gray wire that connects to the power lead coming from the relay. Now, the sniper system contains that wire that's already set up to provide 12 volts for the fuel pump. So I'll just connect that. We're not going to use a relay. I'll just connect that sniper wire to that. The purple wire has to get wired into the gauge that's in the vehicle. So somehow to either this harness or the one that's in the body of the car, that's where the purple wire from that pigtail gets wired. And then there's a black wire with a white stripe that says go to chassis ground. And then there's a black wire that says to go to the battery negative. So there will be a little bit of wiring required here. Not much compared to what I've already done in this car, but a little bit. So I've had this sending unit loosely attached. Most of them are loosely attached. That one I can't seem to get with my fingers. So I'm going to take out those bolts and get ready to maybe I'll be shutting the camera off. But in the meantime, while I'm taking this off, I'll tell you a story about the purchasing experience for that. Went to Summit Racing, and one of their customer service reps that takes the orders was helping me, and the website says that, and I don't know why it says this, it says there's a 5/16 fuel pump inlet, and he read that and assumed it was an outlet, and actually convinced me that I should, since I'm connecting to the sniper with AN fittings, he convinced me that I should go, well, we talked about it and I decided, let's not blame it totally on him. Talked about it and I decided that I want to flare the fitting for the output, and so he sold me a flaring tool to make a 37-degree flare that's not the same flaring tool you'd use on a brake line. And he sold me fitting to go onto a 5/16 supply line. So I thought and that didn't make sense to me, to be honest with you, because why would Holley design something that had a 5/16 output to feed a unit that has a 3/8? That didn't make sense. So at any rate, once I got this new unit, I looked at it and I said, there's no way in the world that that flaring tool is going to fit into that space there that's available. So I bought the flaring tool in like April, but it took until September for them to deliver the fuel pump. So I said, hey, I can't use this, and I'd have brought it back sooner, but I didn't have the fuel pump in order to know that it wasn't going to work. So they took it back, no question, really. And I tried to buy then a fitting, because I hadn't looked closely at the output So I tried to buy a fitting to go from that 5/16 that I thought was on there based on what the customer service rep had told me. And while I was there, he forgot to put it on the order. And so I was just going to go to one of our local auto parts store and buy a piece of 5/8 hose and use the fitting that he sold me and go and connect it up that way. For some strange reason, I guess in the back of my mind, it didn't seem right that the outlet was 5/16 and the input to the sniper was 3/8. Before I went to the auto parts store to buy what would have been, I was going to get 3 feet of just have to kind of rotate this to get it out. I was going to buy 3 feet of (5/16) fuel injection fuel line, which is like $9 a foot, so over $30 worth of tax. And what I did, fortunately, is I went and I looked at that and I said, that looks like it's 3/8. So I got my 3/8 hose out to test fit it, and I shoved it on there, and sure enough, the 3/8 fit. But now I might have made myself a small problem in that I connected, I think I have 20 feet of this fuel line, and I connected it. Don't want to really pull it off and reconnect it. So I'm either faced with pulling it off and cutting the line, or trying to feed that through. There's a couple things. There's the cover for the gas tank over there. But in addition, and I probably have to unroll it somewhat anyway, because the original fuel line went through that hole in the transmission mount right there, the transmission cross member. So I'd have to unroll it anyway. So now I guess I'm going to have to try to unroll that and slip a hose clamp on it, because I didn't put a hose clamp on it because it wasn't going to be a permanent thing. So it's going to make it a little hard for me to handle and get that thing back on the gas tank cover back on it. So I've got to figure out here, got to move the camera first. And they give you instructions, by the way, for several different models, and some of the models you need to actually take off the, not take off, but move the sending unit float mechanism so that you get an accurate reading on the fuel gauge. I've got the float thing stuck up that way, so it's down. But it specifically says for the model for 75, 6, and 7 Corvettes, you don't have to do that. So that's kind of nice. So there is a gasket Okay, first thing we've got to do is we've got to install that hydromat. That's this onto the pump. I'm trying to see a picture of what that looks like, and most of these are for other tanks where you're putting it into a smaller hole. If you got a 75, 6 or 7 vet, you got a huge hole in there. They don't even show you a picture on here of the 75, 6, 7. They're just showing you all these other ones. But so I guess that's kind of lucky that that's the case here. So I'm going to open up the hydromat, and there's on the bottom of this tank there's a plug. I must have tested this because still got some kind of fluid in it. It's not gasoline. It doesn't smell like gasoline. Smells like mineral fluid or mineral oil or something like that. So I'm going to wipe my hands off before I touch that. Okay, they sent me a seal that looks like it goes around here. But when I look at this seal here that's in the tank, it appears to be attached to the bladder that's in the tank. So I don't think it's a good idea to remove that, because if it's attached to the bladder, you're going to rip it apart. So I think I am going to install that without that new seal, because I think the old one's good enough. Okay, now inserting the, what do they call this thing? Hydromat. There's a pin here, and there's a nipple on the, I'm sure I'm in the way. There's a nipple on the fuel pump that it goes over, and then there's a pin that goes through a hole there. It's a pretty tight fit. I've used a fair amount of effort to put it on, so I don't think that's going to go anywhere. This is where, if I can avoid it, I don't want to take that hose off. rotate the camera around. Oops, outlets on that side. You have to turn this way to get it through the hole. That's not going to turn. Let's try it this way. Uh-oh. Hydromat just fell off. That's not good. I have to see if I can somehow slip a pair of pliers over that to be able to press better on those plastic edges to make sure that that hydromat locks on. So I guess I'm really glad that fell off. I don't want to pond on this. Still not on good. It's not going in the tank till I get it on good. I'm going to have to see if I can figure out a way to maybe hold that pump so I can tap it on with a dead blow hammer or something, because it's got to be on better than that. I can't risk it falling off in the tank. And the way the pump is connected, it's connected with just hoses. Okay, I got it on. I felt that go on good. Yeah. Whoops. Don't drop it. So, let's give this another shot. Going into the tank. Again, the outlet's got to be on that side. Not going in that way. Kind of a tight fit. gonna try to shine a light down in there and make sure that that hydromat is still connected. Okay, I kind of chickened out about not putting this in. I'm gonna put it in over top of the one that's there, so that in case that is hardened from age, this rubber will seal. I don't want to have any gasoline leaking out of the gasket, that's for sure. So I'm going to pull that back out. Wish I'd have chickened that earlier. They don't give you specific instructions here, so that's kind of a little bit disturbing. Now, how do they expect you to do it right when they don't give you detailed instructions? I'm going to feel safer with that on that way. I do believe that the other gasket that remained, though, is still connected to that bladder, so I didn't want to try to rip it off. And quick peek in. Yep. Hydromat's still connected. I thought it would be, because once I got it clicked on, there was a metal ring inside the connector, if you will, and that metal ring grabbed onto the plastic guide pin. And I'm going to pull this off because that bolt is going to have a tough time going through if I don't. So now I've got to start, I don't know, like almost a dozen bolts. And they give you bolts and washers, so I'm going to use bolts and washers. And I need more light on the subject here so that I can see to line up those holes. I'll probably end up getting one of my picks to be able to pull the gasket to align it. Yeah, these are not lined up at all. Let's go with one that's lined up pretty good right away. And then we will be able to just take a pick and move these around as we get them lined up. Not taking any of them down tight until they're all threaded, but get them lined up. I'll get them started in the threads. Once they're all lined up, then I'll tighten them in a cross pattern. So I'm not going to video me inserting all those tubes, or those bolts rather. I'll just go ahead and put them in and come back when I start to make some other connections. So this is what I get frustrated with about suppliers of aftermarket parts. It would appear these two holes are closer than these two holes. So I've got the gasket in upside down. And there's no, as I said, no instructions at all on putting the gasket in. It's just really frustrating when you pay. This fuel pump was almost $400, and they can't even give you a clue about how it all fits together. Let's see if I can maybe slip this off this way. Not taking it all the way off. Yeah, if I line these up, some of the holes line up. No. This one doesn't. This one doesn't. I guess these don't really either, so it is, I believe, upside down. So let me make sure that I flip it over the right way. I'm going to lay it down on the top of it first. Now I can tolerate a little bit of it being off, because I can move it and adjust it a little bit, but the other way was really far off. So yeah, that looks like it'll go. So I'll just lift this up a little bit and work this over the unit. Okay. Try to see if I can stick a couple bolts through the gasket and have them hold the gasket in position, because they seem to kind of fit kind of tight on in the gasket. Okay, that's not going to work if I have to do that. I need to get myself something so that when I lay this down, it doesn't go all the way down. Or I have to start screwing them in right away, lining them up and screwing them in. Okay, I'm on the right road now, but I'll be putting in the rest of those screws, and I'll be back when I'm ready to make some other connections, like with the fuel line. So I think they're all started now. A couple of them were a challenge because the original bladder wasn't lining up with the hole. So what I did is I reached between the new one I was putting in and grabbed the hole of the bladder and pulled it in alignment with the pick. And once I got it in alignment with the pick, quickly dropped the screw in and hit the threads. And that worked pretty well. Now I'm going to tighten those down quickly. Can't use that one. That one's not in the threads, so maybe you get to see how I did this. Those actually look to be lined up pretty good. Going to try tightening ones next to it a little bit to hopefully draw the thing down and make that easier. I'm beginning to wonder how well I have these in. They don't seem to be catching. Tighten these too tight with the power wrench if they're not threaded right, or even if they are. Don't want to go too far. Gonna have to play with these. They are not. The one caught really well. I guess this one did too. That one caught. That one caught. Did not. Gonna have to go around and work on these individually, but you get the idea. To get them all to catch the threads is not necessarily a walk in the park. So So they're all started now. I guess it took about a half hour total. To get them all started. Some of them were easier than others. It helped sometimes to putting the ones on either side of the one that you're having trouble starting, because that would pull down the frame a little bit, and that made it go on a little bit easier. Maybe the fact that I have that second seal in there is making the screws just marginal in terms of length. I'm going across again from the center out. Depending on the bolt pattern, you can't always go diagonal, but like I have two choices now, this one or this one. I'm going to take the long one. After I get this on, the next challenge becomes, there's a cover that goes on over this, and the fuel lines and the wiring go under the cover, but the hole in the cover isn't big enough to reach like this outlet to put the clamp on it, I don't believe. I'm going to measure that, but I don't believe that's... I think the entire opening is only about this big, so if you put it kind of over the center of that fuel cap, you're not going to reach that with that cover on. So it almost becomes a matter of thread the fuel line through the cover, lay the cover over there, and then attach the fuel line and the wiring, and then pull it over. Okay, so that's on. I'm going to retrieve the cover and show you what I mean when I say you won't be able to reach that. No way. So this is going to have to come and sit up here somehow. And the wires, I think that I'm going to try and take them this way. Well, Okay, before I do that, there's a rubber bladder that goes around the fuel tank to catch any excess fuel that might spill. Now, to be honest, I had this car a number of years and I've put gas in a lot of times. I've never had a problem with fuel spilling. So I'm not sure that that thing is even important, but you need to have that on. The question is, do I route the wires under it? Well, looks like that'll work. And this is going to be just long enough that way to be visible from the hole in the tank, or the tank cover. This right here probably should come out here. That's where the original came out. So I'm going to take this piece, plug it into the harness on the body, and just so that I am sure that this will work, I'm going to plug this in before I put that cover on. So I've got to route some fuel line up through there, through the cover, underneath it, and this wire. So plug this in. It has a nice weather seal here. Not sure what good that does when the other ends are open, but I guess they're through a weather seal too. So it's probably helpful. So before I forget to plug this into the wiring harness, I'm going to do that. It's probably going to get cut because it needs to, I may even cut the harness off and make my own connection to this wire coming out of the and there's plenty of wire there to do that, I believe. So let's see what we can do here. I have to set it. It's not in my way for working, but that I can get the wires and the fuel line through it. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I was able to easily drop the wire through it. So now we have I am going to use the end of the line that was not on the nipple there. The reason I'm doing that is I know this line is longer, so I'll be cutting off the end that was on there and pulled off. So this wire, or not wire, hose, needs to go through that. And I need a hose clamp on it before I push it on so that I can then tighten it up. On the original car, this was a rubber hose. Now this is fuel injection hose, so it's a higher PSI rating. But I'm going to put this on here pretty tight because see, that's rotating it and that can't be too tight. I have to put it on pretty tight because I don't want to leak here, because once I get this back together, get the engine in, curing a leak here would require me to pull off this cover. To rotate this clamp up because it's walking its way around as I'm tightening, and I'm losing the ability to get the socket in on it without having it at an angle, and if it's in an angle it's going to slip off the nut. It's not going to be good. Okay. I'm going to get a ratchet so I can get more leverage on that to tighten it tighter. Now that's not twisting. I don't want to tighten this too much because you can destroy those hose clamps by tightening them too much. So now that that's on, I can lift the fuel tank cover place. How about that? The fitting comes out just far enough that if necessary I could unplug it. I've managed to pull the wire loom off of the wire. What I'm going to do so that doesn't happen again is take some tape and tape that in place. I don't want to be fighting with it the whole time. And then we'll get this further into position. It does flux a little bit. And I'm going to have to crawl under there. And unfortunately, I've got my body up on the lift. So I do have to crawl under there because I can't use the lift to find out if anything's holding it up, namely that overflow hose. And then maybe start a few bolts to hold it in place. And as I said, there is no way you're going to get to that fitting once it's in place. So I'm going to shut the video off and go see how I'm faring with the alignment of the screw holes. I can show you on the back here, there's 4, one on each end, 2 towards the middle. There's 1 under here, 1 further over, and I can see that I'm hung up on the frame here, so that one might not be down far enough. But like anything with a lot of bolts like that, the key is get them started before you tighten. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So the fuel tank cover is on. It was helpful to tighten or get them all started and then adjust it. A couple of them I did tighten to basically help move it to where I needed it to be. But for the most part, just attach them loosely and then screw them in. I'm going to touch those with a manual wrench so I can tell how tight they are. But that part of the job is finished. So these little clips that hold the fuel line onto the frame are a little bit difficult to work with. The trick, once you spread them open, they're going to be spread even wider than this, and it's hard to get these 2 screws to align. You have to squeeze them with a pair of channel locks or pliers or something in this direction so that it brings those holes in line. Now I got a bolt started through that one by doing that, and on all of the fuel lines that I took off, the bolt was to the outside of the frame. So once I got that through there, I can line it up with the hole in the frame. Try to get my hand out of the way in a second. I'm going to have to try to hold that. So that's the first one on. wish I could have had it maybe a little further, more aligned with the frame, I guess I should say. I'm going to try to. See if I can hold it with a pair of channel locks. I couldn't hold it with my fingers. A lot of torque on that wrench. Can't even hold it with pliers. Can't get a grip on it. Let's try something here. We'll try to start it lined up way to the other side. And then as it pulls it, it'll pull it more in line with where I want it. Still went past it, past where I wanted it. Maybe the power wrench is just too much for it. Let's try it with a manual wrench. Actually worked a little better. So we move on to the next one. Make sure we're in the frame for the next one. Should be right about there. Spread that open like such. Come back and check to make sure that's in the frame. So now it's spread open and those holes will not align. And by the way, these holes are not really big enough for the bolts. You squeeze it down this way first, but then squeeze it that way to get them to line up. And I think the power wrench is actually good for this. We'll see if we can do it with the manual. But I got it started into the clip. And then I could put the nose of the bolt. It's going to be easier with the power wrench. Then I got the nose of the bolt down into the hole. Once it was already started through the clip. That one was easier to hold because I had more room to get my hand in there. So I will just go down the frame all the way. routing it through that the mount for the transmission down there, and get it up to the front of the car, and that'll be as far as I can go until I get the engine in. So this is as far as I got because I ran out of the clamps to attach the fuel line to the frame. So I've gone over the kick up in front of the rear wheels, and then there's, can't see it very well, that's a little better. It comes over the kick up, goes down, starts running along the frame, goes underneath the transmission mount. Got one more in, then I ran out of clips. There's one more clip that goes right there, and then one that goes on top of the frame right about in that area. I think the hose is hiding it. But basically that is where the hard lines on the original came out. So from there I will go up to a place probably on the inner wheel well, and I will mount a fuel filter there. So this is the fuel filter. It is, if you can see the seam right there, you can take it apart and clean it with, I think, if I remember correctly, mineral spirits, and then you can reuse it. And it attaches to the rubber line with AN fittings that I bought. The blue part goes onto the filter, and the fuel line goes onto the barb inside that little red cap. Goes onto the barb, and then the cap slides over it and screws on, and that puts pressure on the hose for a leak-free fitting. So that's all I'm going to do for this time. Here's where the other fuel line's going to attach right there, and then it'll go up to the fender well for the filter. So I guess it was a productive afternoon. It was a little more difficult than I thought it would be, but it all turned out good in the end.